The Fairly OddParents was one of the golden entries in a generation of irreverent cartoons to come out of the early 2000s.
Fairy Godparents!
Unlike the simplified, hand-drawn animated shows of the early 90s, OddParents looks crisp, clear, and expressive, building on the success and style of shows like Cartoon Network's Dexter's Laboratory. At its heart, though, the show takes a close look at the more difficult parts of childhood.
You're not old enough for this movie, and we're not taking you!
And frankly, many would argue that OddParents is one for the sad kids. I'm Brad here at Wicked Binge, and these are dark, Fairly OddParents theories that might actually be true.
Maybe... Fairies!
Fairy godparents are a metaphor for antidepressants. In the Fairly OddParents, one of the things we know about fairies is that they're only there for the sad kids. Suffering from parental neglect and a psychotic babysitter has ultimately left Timmy fairly miserable.
Oh no! The babysitter!
It's a sad thing when anyone suffers from depression, let alone a child, especially when you remember that, in the real world, there are no fairies. Sorry to break it to you. That's had Fairly Odd fans wondering about what Cosmo and Wanda might represent as an allegory, and Reddit user, Super Inuit, has decided that missing link is drugs, specifically those used to treat depressive disorders like Zoloft and Prozac. It makes sense. They perfectly fit the role in Timmy's life that antidepressants would in reality help him cope with his miserable life. And, like a prescribed drug, they're only given to help kids as long as they need them. Well, depending on how much you trust Big Pharma, I suppose.
I don't know about this, guys.
This is a pretty messed up theory, but isn't it also kind of messed up that so many American kids take psychiatric drugs? We're not saying that it's right or wrong to treat depression with drugs, but what's worrying is how many kids are judged as needing them. Studies show over 2 million American kids under the age of 18 are on antidepressants, with over 500,000 of those under the age of 13. Yikes! Additional evidence to support this theory comes courtesy of the comments section on Reddit, namely the side effects Timmy experiences when he abuses the fairy magic, and a suggestion that other fairies could represent different drugs. Jorgen von Strangle,
I'd like to approach the bench.
Steroids, of course, and Juandissimo,
Your voice, it is like the chorus of 1,000 angels!
that little blue pill your dad keeps in his bedside drawer.
Wanda, my sweet.
Timmy's parents neglect him deliberately. Being a parent is a full-time job, and even the best moms and dads need a break sometimes.
Come on, honey, smile. Smiles make everything better.
But the way Timmy's parents do whatever it takes to avoid spending time with him, and, despite their claims of poverty, never seem short of cash for a vacation,
And there's extra money in there so you kids can watch the concert on pay-per-view.
is taking things a little too far. In fact, they're downright neglectful. However, Redditor Curatos has a suggestion for their motives, which sheds a slightly more sympathetic light on their behavior. Rather than neglecting Timmy, their behavior is actually an elaborate ruse to make sure Timmy has and holds on to his fairy godparents. By keeping him miserable with a measly allowance and a horrible babysitter, they're giving him a priceless opportunity to live experiences that would never be afforded to regular kids.
Okay, you guys, my parents are gone. Come on out.
Hey, Timmy, you should see the nuts we just...
If he was happy, all that would be taken away in an instant. And if the fairies knew what Timmy's parents were up to, they wouldn't stand for that either. That's why they can't let anyone in on the secret. What this theory would also mean is that, based on the fact his parents know about fairies, they must have had fairies as kids too, so they had miserable childhoods. It shows that, despite their misery, they still value the fairies' influence above happiness, which is pretty dark.
Don't worry about forgetting that my birthday was today, Mom and Dad.
Kinda reminds you of those parents who force their kids to learn the flute every day when they just want to play outside with their friends. But you need to practice because your fingers are too weak, and nothing's ever good enough anyhow. And you didn't even want to play the flute, but oh no, there's no electric guitar in the New York Symphony Orchestra, and Poof isn't Cosmo's kid. Here's one for all you crazy eugenicists out there. Ever notice how, in the fairy world, fairy colors seem to be hereditary, or at least shared by family members? Cosmo and Mama Cosma both have shades of green, Wanda and Blonda shared those distinctive pink eyes, etc. Well, what's going on with Poof? He's not pink or green. In fact, his coloring looks an awful lot like Juandissimo.
Have no fear, Juandissimo is here!
Could Poof really be the product of some fairly odd cuckoldry? That's exactly what Reddit user Twerking925 thinks for some reason. According to the theory, since Poof was created by magic, the fairy magic attempted to conceive a child between Cosmo and Wanda, but found that Cosmo was infertile. As a result, it ended up using Wandissimo's genetics mixed with Wanda's and implanted the embryo into Cosmo, who carried the baby inside his womb. That part's not a theory. In fairies, the men are the ones who gestate. Well, a lot of people didn't like this theory because, well, why wouldn't the wish just make Cosmo fertile, or even use his genetics to create an embryo without making him fertile? Those are good questions for which we have no good answers.
Wish it out! Wish it out!
Timmy had a twin sister. This is a big one. Credit to Redditor Pajama Penguin for this. Alright, so let's break it down. To start with, Timmy's fairies don't exist. In fact, no fairies exist. This is demonstrated by the fact that almost nobody knows they exist, and how so often episodes end with back to normal.
Well, everything is back to the way it was.
Suggesting it was all just Timmy's imagination. Also, note how the rules prohibit Timmy from doing almost anything that will have an impact on reality, like wishing for money or true love. With that established, let's take a look at all the objects around the house which Cosmo and Wanda morph into. If they aren't really fairies, that's an awful lot of pink and green decoration. Now we see Timmy's parents moving into the house with a load of pink items and the secret of Denzel Crocker. So what about the green stuff? According to the theory, Timmy's parents were expecting a girl, but unexpectedly had twins. Remember Erica and Friends? One boy, Timmy, and a girl. Something happened along the way, and they tragically lost Timmy's sister.
It's the perfect home for a young couple who can't wait for the birth of their new daughter.
To cope with the depression of losing a child and avoid negatively influencing Timmy's upbringing, they frequently employ a babysitter to take care of their child, Vicky. What's Vicky's color? Green. Supposedly, rather than being a cruel, evil babysitter as Timmy believes, Vicky was caring and pitied Timmy for growing up all around these pink items. Over the years, she consistently bought him green gifts for balance.
And I can't wait for my special alone time with Timmy.
Ever hear how when a twin dies, it's like the other twin lost a part of themselves? The contrast between these pink and green objects only serves to remind Timmy that there's a piece of him missing. Imagining them as fairies is all part of his grief process, as he yearns for a bond that he'll never again feel. Honestly, there is so much more to this theory that we don't have time for. We recommend reading the full post on Reddit if you want all the details. Trixie is depressed. More mental health problems. Why is it that the kids' cartoons always produce the darkest theories? This idea, put forward by We Write to Mexican, hinges on the episode where Timmy wishes he and Trixie were the last two people on Earth.
I wish Trixie and I were the only two humans and/or intelligent life forms on Earth besides my fairy godparents, and Trixie didn't question why.
Trixie's immediate reaction is to panic because she no longer has an army of admirers to prop up her shallow self-esteem.
I need somebody to adore me!
Although she's a privileged kid with a rich family, they seem to almost never be around. In fact, they make Timmy's mom and dad look like model parents. Despite having wealth and good looks, she lacks confidence in her other abilities and uses her advantages as a crutch to fall back on. Secretly, she feels hollow and longs for a real connection. This theory adds up because instead of trying to bond with her normally, Timmy always seems to have an elaborate plan to win her heart, making him seem like all the other boys who chase after her. Then again, who cares about some rich kid? You can go cry all the way to the bank, Trixie. Talk about first world problems. Humanity is ruled by the fairies. You've seen The Matrix, right? Good, because that's pretty much what this theory is, except without the actual Matrix. Basically, the fairies are farming humans for their intelligence. That's how fairies either power fairy world or use it to somehow propagate and make more fairies? That part isn't worked out, but hey Luda you like to eat is damn sure those fairies are up to something.
Fairy godparents!
Once again, this theory is based on an occurrence and the secret origin of Denzel Crocker, specifically the memory wiper. It's unclear why fairies use these devices at all, considering fairy wands seem to be able to do the exact same thing. So what exactly is its function, other than to reference Men in Black?
You will forget you ever had a fairy!
The theory points out that the memory wiper leaves Crocker permanently, physically, and mentally damaged. It proposes that, rather than just being assigned to sad kids, all kids have fairies, and they're told that they're special in order to keep them quiet, so the humans don't work out what's going on. After a nurturing upbringing by fairies, they then harvest the child's intelligence with a memory wiper, leaving them an idiotic adult, like all the adults in the show. To quote the theory, this leaves humanity in a constant cycle of bleak yet hopeful childhoods and blind, dumb adults. Pfft, me not believe that. But what do you think? Do you buy into any of these dark theories about the show? Or do you have your own dark theories about the Fairly Odd Parents? Let us know in the comments section below. Please remember to like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. But most importantly, stay wicked.